My name is John Glisson. I'm the Vice President of Research for the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association, which is located in Georgia. And U.S. Poultry is a trade association for the poultry industry. I'm a veterinarian, and I've spent my life in various roles throughout the poultry industry. And I'm going to try to give you just a short peek at what people are dealing with and maybe help you understand some of the problems that go beyond the regulations. So, with the current changes that are being implemented for the poultry industry, by and large, are not that difficult. Compliance with Guidance 213, really it's a matter of having to learn how to manage the VFDs, and that's what people are dealing with. The poultry industry is totally on board with all of this, and it's just really putting together the mechanisms and systems to issue, communicate, and archive VFDs. Really, that's the hard part. You have to realize the poultry industry is very corporate. There's not a lot of independent production of poultry. So these are large companies that are doing very complex things all the time. So this is one more complex thing to do. Now, having said that this is really not so difficult. What is difficult is that the consumer has leapfrogged way beyond this. And I know you've been talking about this for a day or so, but restaurant chains, grocery chains, all hotel chains, all sorts of retail food producer or sellers have begun to say that they're going to not sell poultry products that have ever had any exposure to antibiotics. Now that is a very different horse. Very, very different. And so that's what we're dealing with. So the poultry industry is a big, broad thing. Eggs and turkeys and broilers and ducks and all that. So in our short time, I can't talk about all that. I'm going to just mention a couple things in the broiler industry and help you understand what the broiler industry has to look at in order to fill these orders. This is their customers. This is what they want, and the poultry industry will provide that. But the background behind that is that there's some very difficult decisions to make and some very difficult questions to answer as you go through this, and a broiler company has to determine how they're going to work through all this to provide what the customer wants. I'm going to give you two examples. There are others. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but I want to give you an idea. I know you're not poultry people. So the most important disease of broilers is coccidiosis, intestinal protozoan. We spend more money to prevent that disease than all the other diseases combined. So any way you look at it, it's very, very important. It's easily controlled by prevention dosage of the non-medically important antibiotics, ionophores. And that's what we've been doing since Eli Lilly introduced Moninstin in the early 70s. And now we have a number of ionophores. It works very, very well. But you realize in a no antibiotics ever program, you can't use that. So we are seeing more and more coccidiosis as a result of that. Now, coccidiosis, this protozoan, when it damages the intestinal tract, it sets up conditions that allow Clostridium perfringens to multiply, bloom, produce toxins. And so we get a disease in chickens that we call necrotic enteritis. So it's a disease complex. It's a fatal disease, although many birds have it at a subclinical level. And so we try all sorts of things without using ionophores. There are chemical coccidiostats, there are vaccines, but none of these things work as well as ionophores. So essentially we've lost our main tool for controlling coccidiosis. Not because FDA says we can't use it, because the customer says we can't use it. It's a difficult situation. Necrotic enteritis can be totally prevented by using antibiotics in the feed. So we've got two diseases, coccidiosis and necrotic enteritis. We know how to prevent, but our customer is taking away the tools for prevention. Here's another one. Within the poultry industry, we have a lot of viral respiratory diseases. And I just mentioned one, infectious bronchitis virus. This is a respiratory coronavirus. You saw the problems that the pig industry had with the coronavirus. This is the same family of viruses, but it's in the respiratory tract. It's constantly changing. All our broilers are vaccinated for this disease, but it's very difficult to keep up with the changing virus. So, you know, a new virus can pop up at any time. And when it does, it'll spread through a region very, very fast. It's very contagious. So the important thing to know that the end result of all respiratory diseases in birds is air saculitis. Birds have an organ that we don't have in the respiratory tract, air sacs, little thin-walled membranes that are inside the bird that are attached to the lungs. They're very susceptible to infection, damage, inflammation. And so the end result of any viral respiratory disease in birds is air saculitis, bacterial air saculitis, usually E. coli. There are no non-medically important antibiotics that are effective against that. In order to treat a flock that has air saculitis, you must use a medically important antibiotic. It's a tough deal for us. I just throw this in here to give you some idea. If you measure the health of poultry in the United States, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can say, look at mortality over the last 30, 40 years and how it's gone down. And that's a good measure. But, you know, the most sensitive measure is condemnation at slaughter. In the poultry industry, every bird is inspected inside and out by FSIS. If there's anything wrong with it, it's condemned. That's a very expensive process. When that bird gets condemned, you've got all the production cost in it, you got all the transport cost in it, you got all the slaughter cost in it, and then it goes in the can. So the poultry industry has worked very hard to minimize that. And what I'm showing you here, this is a percentage of heads slaughtered for air saculitis in the whole United States since, looks like in the 60s. And you can see how it's gone down, 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 down. That's required a lot of work over a long period of time by a lot of people. And it's involved eradication of vertically transmitted diseases, huge improvements in vaccines, huge improvements in air quality, water quality, feed. All these things have come together to make this number. What we fear is that number is going to go back up. We don't know how much. But we no longer have some of the tools, specifically medically important antibiotics, to treat these birds. You know, and as I talk to audiences, they say, well, the reason they get sick is you mistreat them. Well, that's not true. You know, I challenge anybody to go, you choose. You say, this is the best chicken farmer in the world. There he is right there. If you go in his house, you're going to find some sick chickens. That's just the way it works. So we're not eliminating disease. We're no matter how well we take care of the birds, we still have some sick animals. So I'll leave you with these questions. These are difficult questions for us. And I wanted to help you understand what we're struggling with behind the scenes. Because we don't always know the answers to all these things. Is it better to use a non-medically important antibiotic to prevent coccidiosis, ionophores, and to prevent necrotic enteritis, or use no antibiotics and treat flocks with medically important antibiotics? Which is better? We're being forced into treating sick flocks. Second question, should flocks with bacterial air saculitis be treated with medically important antibiotics? If they get sick, we've got to treat them. But none of the non-medically important antibiotics will work. What do you do with flocks treated with antibiotics and no antibiotics ever program? Companies that are producing no antibiotics ever chicken, they have to treat some flocks, and they have to have a market for that. So it becomes very, very complicated. Is it ethical to allow flocks to get sick when we know how to safely prevent the disease? And many cases, we're in that situation. We know how to keep these birds healthy, but we have to, in some cases, allow them to get sick. So those are the things that we're dealing with, and I hope that'll give you a tiny piece of the perspective.